All right, hey, figure drawing students. What I'm going to do in this video is the first of a two-part exercise that I'll want you guys to do. And the point of the exercise is to start to look at light and shade and how that works on the figure. Now, we don't have the figure to work with, obviously, so what I've done is I've created a shape out of cloth that I want you to do. So what you can do is just take something like a sheet and fold it like this, and then you can just put kind of a big loose knot in the sheet. Pull it, and then you'll hang it up and light it with a direct light source, and that'll be our model. That'll be the stand-in for the figure. Now, obviously, it's not the figure, but the way the folds work on cloth is not entirely dissimilar to how organic form works in light and shade. So it's an imperfect model, but it'll start us down the path of being able to sort of decipher how light and shade works on the human figure. So I think it'll be a helpful exercise for you without having the model. All right, so once you've set that up, then what I want you to do is to tone a piece of your good paper with charcoal and then wipe it so that you get a fairly even tone, and that'll be our starting place. All right, so with light and shade, the first thing that I want to do is to do a drawing like we've been doing in class, where we kind of look very simply at the shape and break it down into straight lines. So that's going to be the starting place here. So, and when you do the drawing on your on your paper, think about making this knot fairly large. So here I'm looking at this knot and sort of seeing it is about this big. It's going to be easier to deal with shapes of light and dark if we're working on a slightly larger scale. So I don't want you to do a tiny little knot drawing on your big paper here. All right, so simple angular drawing. So here we've got the knot, and then this area sort of coming out down here. All right, so just kind of setting things up as an angular drawing. And with the light and shade, as we move forward and start using light and shade to create things like volume, it all works better if your drawing is in the ballpark. So just so take a little bit of time with your drawing and make sure that you're getting at least sort of close to what you see here, because value in light and shade is not going to save a poor drawing. So in terms of your proportions, so if your proportions are really off, then the whole process of light and shade and using value in general becomes a little bit more problematic, a little bit more difficult to end up with something that that looks kind of interesting and like what you're looking at. All right. So I created a very simple shape here with the knot and the cloth coming into it and then coming out of it. And so the next thing I want to do, and I'm sort of going through this quicker actually, obviously than you will, but so you can spend a little bit more time with your angular drawing and just making sure that you're getting things fairly close. But I'm going to move on here just for the sake of not making an incredibly long video here. What I want to do next with light and shadow, the first step is to really determine what's in the path of the light and what's not in the path of the light, and to show that very clearly, like just showing what's light and what's shadow. So with my light source coming over here from the right and above and slightly in front of the object, that means that everything on this side in general is going to be lit, and then everything on this side is going to be in shadow. So, so I want to look and try to find that demarcation line between shadow and light. And I've got two kinds of shadow that I want to think about. One is form shadow, which is created by this form turning away from the light. So this is a form shadow along here. And then I have cast shadow, which is this object casting its shadow onto another surface, in this case, the background. So those two ideas I want to map out very, very simply. So, and again, I don't have to be perfect here, but I just want to generally, again, with straight lines, I'm just going to map out this border line between that I see between the shadow and the light. And it's important to keep this, this shadow shape pretty simple at the beginning, because once you get your lights and shadows put in, it's, as I probably said before in other classes, if you've taken my Drawing 1 class or Drawing 2 classes, this first step of light and shade is also a way to judge your drawing. So it's another tool that you have in your toolbox in terms of judging proportion. Once you get this line shape broken up into a light and a shadow, then it's a little bit easier to start judging your drawing. So it behooves you to keep things really simple at this stage, not try to do too much with this first go through with light and shade. All right, so you may not be able to see what I'm doing here, but I can see what I'm doing. So now what I'm going to do is use my chamois to take out the light. And what I want to establish here is first just a simple combination again of lights and shadows, both on this object and on the background as well. So I want to pay attention to the local value. So what I mean by that is the local value of that dark cloth in the background is obviously darker than the white cloth. So its light will be darker than the light of the cloth. And its shadow over here will also be darker than the shadow of the cloth. So as I begin here, I'm going to use my middle tone. My middle tone will be a stand-in for the shadow of the white object, and it'll also be the stand-in for the time being of the light on the background, so it'll serve both purposes. But for my shadow my cast shadow on the background here, that's extremely dark because it's a black cloth, so I have to go darker, obviously, to make that shadow happen. Okay, and now what I want to do is take out my light, and I'm not sure if my chamois is quite clean enough to take out my light, but we'll see. So I'm not worrying about any kind of differentiation in the light, right? Just the idea here is separating light from shadow. So a single light against a single shadow shape will do that. So my chamois is a little dirty, so I'm going to just come back with my eraser and just try to make this contrast a little bit clearer, because as I make this contrast a little bit more readable between the light and the shadow, that means I'm going to be able to see my drawing a little bit better. If I don't have enough contrast, then the idea of light and shadow helping me judge my drawing is not quite as relevant. So I just need to, in a flat way, take out this light a little bit more. Just a little bit more clearly. Okay, so here I've, in very, very general terms, mapped out light and shadow on this on this knotted cloth, and then light and shadow, excuse me, on the background. So I'm going to leave the first video here. What I'm going to do is just show you at the next stage, I'm going to work on this a little bit more on my own and sort of take this step to a place where we'll be able to kind of jump off to the next idea, which is creating tonal gradations to start making this a little bit more volumetric feeling. Okay? All right, that's good for now.